that's gross. Where it's worse, biodiversity loss, tropical rainforests, coral reefs, and temperate forests. You'll hear about the Amazon rainforest, you'll hear about the Great Barrier Reef. Those are just one of the two most major upsetting stories that biodiversity is involved with. Tropical rainforests with coral reefs are the most endangered ecosystems in the world. And both of those ecosystems are extremely vulnerable to a substantial loss of biodiversity. Temperate rainforests are also in the same boat. Deforestation is one of the most common practices that's interfering with all parts of plant reproduction. Here's a graph that I actually took from a textbook. So it's kind of hard to read, but all of these different categories are ecosystems. Like we've got deserts, tropical and subtropical coniferous forests, but all of these, like the higher you get to 100, that means more land is being converted to something else, whether it's, and then these are projected loss by 2050 is this dark maroon, and that just shows a huge jump. Like these tropical coniferous forests, we lost about 40-ish%, but then by 2050 we're gonna lose over 70. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know how this like ties into like overpopulation?
Yes. Well, that's human. So the more humans that there are, the less land that there is to serve those people with. So the more we're gonna have to tap into those sacred grounds, kind of. So I mean, we're trying to fit everyone in, but I just don't know how that's gonna happen, and I don't know how we're going to use what we've already used. That's what I'm gonna talk about.
We're not replacing that problem.
Right. Exactly.
So it's gone. It's gone.
Right. Yeah. So this just shows how much is being used and what will be lost. Now, here are some scary numbers. 60% of populations of mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians on average have declined by 60% between 1970 and 2014. And that's the most recent year with available data. So that's just well over half. And then the Earth is estimated to have lost about half of its shallow water corals in the past 30 years. So stuff that we'll just never see again, and that's due to bleaching. And then a fifth of the Amazon has disappeared in just 50 years. I'll discuss that. And we spend $125 trillion a year to provide services that would help ensure the supply of fresh air, clean water, food, energy, medicines, and much more. So we hope that that money is being used towards that and showing some results, but we'll never know for certain, and that's a huge amount of money. So here are the things that I was talking about earlier that breaks it down. So this is the Amazon rainforest, which is experiencing deforestation as the most common issue. This was back in 1950, and that's in 2020. So that's scary. The Great Barrier Reef, you guys have all heard about. This was back in 1970, stunning, gorgeous, thriving. You can tell the color was just lost, and then now it's just completely dead. If not completely. So the solution, no, that's what this is about. Think creatively, think green, think sustainably. I just came up with those three things. How can you use what already exists to create more? It's the same thing that I was saying. Try to use what has already been used. I mean, there's always going to be more to give, but you got to stop taking things from things that we're going to need in the future. And think green. How can you implement more green in your life? Buy a house plant, put it in your house. It is really great for your air. Think sustainably, reduce, reuse, recycle, and try to decrease waste. That's really important. So here's some legislation that's actually in place to help out with this. So in 2017, actually this is the most recent one, 50 conservation scientists proposed a global deal for nature. Most of these all have very similar ideals, but this one calls for a more aggressive response to the extinction crisis, and therefore they're increasing habitat protection, which I mentioned is a big issue, habitat destruction. And it's aiming to protect at least half of the earth for nature conservation by 2050, and it's going hand in hand with the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Then back in 1973, President Nixon actually signed the Endangered Species Act into law, which is still in place today, super important. Calls to protect and recover species at risk as well as ecosystems they depend on, and includes everything. So and a lot of times people that are advocating for a specific species will go to a convention and fight for and say, please put this down as an endangered species, we need funding to ensure that it doesn't go extinct. And then last but not least, CITES, the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species in Wildlife, Flora and Fauna, was adopted. It's an agreement between governments worldwide that wild animals and plants that are traded internationally don't include species that have been recognized or endangered or threatened. There's lots of problems with this. We all know about like elephant tusks and ivory being a thing, and just the illegal trading of super endangered, if not almost extinct species. So this should have a little bit more of a hold on our governments, but it unfortunately doesn't.